Before going for the discourse of the day, I thank Professor Adian Vajpayee and Professor Govind Sharma, Professor Yogendra Dikshit ji, who have given me the opportunity to participate on this platform of Professor Madhukar Shyam Chaturvedi ji. Our topic today is quite current and lively, and we are much into it through media, social media, and newspapers, and we are having multiple of opinions and dimensions and perspectives. Before I come to the primary theme of the discussion, I would like to locate this current border standoff and India-China relations, their contemporary, their current estrenchment and conflicting situation. See, 21st century has begun on certain strange notes. It has certain similarities with the 1928 depression, Great Depression of Europe. And immediately after that depression, we saw a conflicting situation in Europe, and that led to Second World War. We had the similar kind of things in 2008 when we faced a great economic crisis. And in the following years, the squeezing of the economies of Europe and United States and throughout the world, and in between there was certain exceptions. India and China, they somehow managed their growth rate, and that's why the attention of the world has diverted towards Asia. This is the century of Asia. This is a general belief. We all know that. We had certain public discourses and certain volumes that spoke about the 21st century challenges and the kind of issues that are going to be discussed. One major, I would say, the argument was by Francis Fukuyama, the student of Samuel Huntington. Huntington, we all know as a student of political science, and in social sciences this is quite common debate that there will be a clash of civilization that Huntington proposed 2 decades back. So somehow we find that Huntingtonian argument survives in 21st century, and his student Fukuyama has given another twist to it when he says that the 21st century is going to face the ethnic and identitarian issues and the nationalist fervor. Different states have thrown populist regimes. Populism is quite close, it appears to be quite close to democracy, or the populist or the popular governments. They may be popular on one front, but so far as substantial democracy is concerned, populist governments don't stay much. They don't have that kind of hold with the public. Their hijacking of the public psychology on account of populist slogans. For example, Trump is one of the biggest example of populist election campaign that he led, in which he spoke about America first, and then lots of arguments, Black Lives Matter, and anti-immigration movements in United States and in Europe. So there was a spate of populist movements throughout the world. So the 21st century is down with the identitarian crisis, and this is a traditional, an old adage that those who expand economically, they expand territorially also. The same is true of China. that today China, since it is second to United States, and it appears that by 2025 or 2030, it may leave United States behind so far as its growth rate is concerned, and the expanse of its economy is concerned. It may leave United States far behind. So it is expanding economically, and simultaneously in the post-COVID order, though China has succeeded in controlling the Wuhan virus, this may be something which is familiar to Chinese, but the world is failing to digest this. How this virus has been tackled in China, and then there are lots of conspiracy theories behind it. But the Chinese control of the COVID and the dilapidated state of world today, and the dwindling economies of world states, this has given China an opportunity to grab the things in its way, and the draconian economics is having its way. And simultaneously, since China is expanding economically, it has territorial plans also. China has been utilizing the theory of history on account of the settling territorial disputes with states. However, in international law, there is no space for it. Historically, if India follows the suit, then India, the Greater India or the Akhand Bharat, it had huge extensions from Kabul, Kandahar, even up to Persia, to Burma. So that kind of historical claim, they are inconsistent with the contemporary international law. But China has been following them since it is economically strong. It has been pricking the territories of its neighbors. It has more than 22 neighbors, and it has territorial disputes with 14 states. India is one among them. Now, coming to India-China border standoff, I would like to go into history a bit before I come into the regional spillover, that is the target of this lecture. I will go into little bit, not I won't take much, how India has a connection with Ladakh and Tibet, and how China has claim over Tibet, and they want to expand southward. See, Tibet has remained an independent state and a sovereign state till 13th century, and it had connection with China only in 13th century with Yuan dynasty that controlled Tibet for some time, and with the emergence, with the control and the movement, the social and spiritual movement of Dalai Lama in 16th and 17th century, Tibet developed the sense of an independent nation. It remained an independent nation till 1950. The status of Tibet was that of a vassal state. It was a vassal state in international law terminology. A vassal state is a state that is a kind of the old landlordism, and the state relationship was there. In a vassal state, certain subsidies are given to the governing state, and rest of the internal autonomy and the governance lies with the state. It is a kind of clientele state, we can call, or a kind of puppet state. But the puppet state doesn't lose sovereignty. It may have strong relationship with the controlling state or satellite states. We have, I don't want to name, in the current scenario also we dub certain states that they are moving towards the kind of satellite kind of state status, or the clientele or the puppet status, and they lose actually the de facto control of the things. They remain the de jure owner of the state. So that was the status of Tibet till 1950. How come India and China confront each other on borders in 20th century when they have remained so close to each other for millenniums. India and China are the oldest civilizations of the world, and throughout millenniums they have coexisted without any antagonism towards each other. If I take some historical examples with the visit of Fahian and Hyun the Chinese travelers, they even tell that Chinese students used to come to Nalanda and Takshila. These was the hub of education, the hub of intellectual formation, the hub of spread of knowledge. So how come that in later years we turn inimical to each other? We have to one thing about Nalanda, that India was, I think, little bit late in making Nalanda University, and China went for it secretively. And in China, in Henan province, they have founded a Buddhist this Nalanda University, and the first batch was recruited in 2017. So on cultural front, India and China have been collaborating, and they have, as Xi Jinping in 2019, when he was in Chennai, he mentioned that we have a long-term project of 100 years. We have to build on a cooperative methodology, a long-term relationship. His reference was obviously to economics and trade between the two states. But then immediately after 6 months, what happens at Galwan, then this shows the commitment that China has shown in the history. So Chinese they are difficult to be trusted. They are following the Sun Yuvian art of war and art of diplomacy, how to deal with the states. But then Kautilya has retorted, as we all know, currently what has happened at Kalpan. I would come to the lines of dispute between India and China. The lines of dispute, the LAC, the line of actual control. Actually, there is no LAC. Both the states, India and China, are having overlapping claims. Overlapping claims since the time of India has only one connection towards Tibet, that Raja Gulab Singh and his general Joravar Singh. He conquered Ladakh, he conquered southern Tibet for some time, and that is the only Indian connection with Tibet. Even Nepal has conquered Tibet, certain territories of Tibet for some time, so they have that bit of connection. Otherwise, Tibet was an independent zone till 1950. It had the status of a vassal state. In 1946-47, in some international conference, Tibet participated as a sovereign state. The things went different just after 1949. China turns sovereign, and it starts expanding territorially. LAC, the initial line that was demarcated was by Johnson. That is called Johnson Line. It was demarcated in 1865, but British government kept silent for quite a long over this line, and till 1890 there was no response. In somewhere around 1890, this line was proposed by Johnson, was turned down by British government. Then one Chinese official, I'm not recalling the name of that official. He was posted at Xinjiang, and there was the British Consul General McCartney. He presented a new line after surveying the area to McCartney, and McCartney in turn proposed the line through MacDonald, who was British official at Qing Dynasty of China at Beijing. So he proposed that line, and that line remained, although Qing Dynasty in China remained little bit silent over it, but this was the belief, general belief with the British, that this line has been accepted by Chinese, and China never opposed this line till 1958, when they finally gave the map which was violative of this McCartney-McDonald line. This line was proposed in 1899. So this is very important. These two lines are very important in India and China border and territorial overlappings and determination of LAC. What happens that in 1941, Soviet troops garrison in Xinjiang district of China, and British they were skeptical about the dangers from north, the Soviet dangers, and they found this McCartney-McDonald line insufficient since it was quite south to the Xinjiang district. So they in 1941 they followed officially they followed the Johnson line for the first time, and this Johnson line was accepted by British government since we are following this McMahon line of the British government's formation as the residue of the border existence between India and China. So line McDonald line loses significance in 1949, and the Indian territory is expanded. Wide Johnson line. This Johnson line gives whole of Aksai to India. This was quite north to the this McCartney-McDonald line, but the problem is that when in 1950 we implement Indian Constitution, what happens that the official map that was declared in 1950, that didn't mention these lines, the line of actual control, the line of control, or the existence of some boundary between India and Tibet. If you'll find this map, you'll find that it has been brushed up, that area has been brushed clean. There is no reference of lines. So that was one of the mistakes. But immediately after the Chinese independence, they they occupy Tibet, and when they occupy Tibet, the Indian resistance, as we know that Nehru had been warned by Sardar Patel also. There is long letter in which he says that we have the biggest danger from the north, not from some Soviet or other left corner, but from China. He was straightforward because China had occupied Tibet, and that was the time when diplomatically India could have placed certain things in front to settle the boundary, but that was the reluctance or the failure of the government at that time, that we couldn't settle the things. We had no leverage, and we passed recognition to Tibet. And when this India-China agreement of 1954, the Panchshil agreement takes place, this was meant only for 8 years. And during those periods, there were certain border skirmishes and intrusions from Chinese side, and there was no resistance from Indian side. We went for Panchshil. It had 8 years term. China that had the provisions of non-intervention, non-aggression, and all that we all know. And China waited for those 8 years and went aggressive and declared total war against India in 1962 after the lapse of this agreement. And in between, so much water flows down the river. In 1950s, we have to focus on certain things. We have to focus on our neighbor also. Pakistan, though it was the result of community anguish and community segregation, and the two-nation theory, India never followed this. Even after this, Pakistan was looking for cooperation with India on certain fronts. How it happens? They went for Western baggage, they went for Santo, and entered into certain military alliances of West, US dominated alliances. But in the meantime, China had been intruding Pakistani territories. India was not intruded first. China intruded Pakistani territories. China had, I would like to give one reference here, the Hunja province, the princely state small of Pak occupied Kashmir, that was officially part of Jammu and Kashmir. China had secretively offered the Prince of Hunja to join China, but he never did. He kept his options open, and when Jammu and Kashmir decided to remain independent he, I think in 1948, this prince Jamal Khan, he joined Pakistan. He signed instrument of accession in favor of Pakistan. So otherwise it was territory of Jammu and Kashmir, the disputed one. Uh, Now, in between, in the meantime, since China had been intruding into Pakistani territories, Pakistan was hoping to get some help from West, since it had joined the Western camp, but it didn't happen. Then gradually China started building a road through Ladakh, and that road links Ladakh, Tibet, Lhasa with Xinjiang district, with Kashgar, Xinjiang, and that went through Indian territory, and it was not noticed. The forward posts from Tibet were withdrawn by the then government, and it was only in 1957-58 that India came to know about the existence of that road. That 112 miles of road had been made through Indian territory, and there were certain, in 1958 there were certain border intrusions also, and Ayub Khan at that time offered Jawaharlal Nehru to come out of the non-alignment shell and make a joint security front, a kind of arrangement to tackle China. But since Nehru was having too much belief in Panchsheel and non-alignment, he turned down the proposal. The same kind of help was offered by Khrushchev from Russian side, but that didn't happen. In 1959, this McDonald line that I was discussing, this gets transformed into Chauhan-Lai line. The Chauhan-Lai wrote a letter to Nehru that a significant issue exists between India and China. The territorial issue exists, and he then presented a map that was quite south it included southern territories of McDonald-McCartney line in the map, and the LAC gets extended to southern territories from McCartney lines, and in 1962 China unilaterally overcome the territory. They occupied the rest of the. This is a wrong belief that Aksai Chin was occupied by China in 1962. 70-80% of the Aksai Chin had already been occupied by China's inching forward policy, and this was the failure of the government to tackle the things accordingly. Even on the recommendations of General Thimayya, and when Indian Army had also sent the proposal to Government of India to increase the strength and control the borders and joint create some force of vigilance over the borders, but that was not met, and the 62 was the result. So currently what has happened, that in the recent border standoff, that 1962 line that was unilaterally developed by China after the Chauhan-Lai line of 1959, which is quite south of the McDonald line, that was followed by China for 50-60 years. Now China is expanding forward, and China is claiming whole of the Galwan Valley, and the whole issue gets stirred up with the development of this Dalbeg Oldie and Darbuk Shiok Road. and it was during the building up of the construction of a bridge that the whole episode takes place at the Galwan Shok River confluence, just 5-6 kilometers from there for point 14. At point 14, China tried to control it, and since it has the leverage over the confluence and the bridge and the development of the road. So the current scenario is obvious that China is again violating and trying to forward its territories. The reasons are different here. The reasons are multiple. At domestic front, Xi Jinping was having troubles. That's why in 2018 he forcibly he managed the things to convert the term of president into lifetime term, just like it happens with the authoritarian states, how Putin is controlling the things. This is a new trend of the 21st century. Now, I would come to the regional issues, how this standoff. Now, since China has been forced back and they never expected that this kind of thing will take place, and China would meet such a thrashing. Although China is not, no, it has not completely withdrawn. The withdrawal has been to certain distances, to certain kilometers, and it will take a long time for settlement. And we never know what happened in Galwan first during 1962. That after 93 days of the withdrawal, China had attacked India. So we have to be on the toes here. One thing significant in South Asia during the current scenario that has taken place is the emergence of a new trio. It was not visible. I would, before I come to the emergence of this trio of Beijing, Islamabad, Kathmandu trio that is working against India, I would like to mention here that in 1951-52, Nepalese leadership had suggested Nehru to counter China's claims on Tibet, and before passing recognition to Tibet, final recognition that we did and signed the Panchshir later on, India should bargain for certain territories, especially the pilgrim places like Mansarovar, but Nehru didn't give a heed to the advice, and since then Nepal has turned neutral. We all know that during the 1962 war, Nepal played neutral. It was never with India or China. This time also we expected that Nepal should remain neutral, but it didn't happen. It has gone China's way. Since they are having a communist regime, they are having a controlled mechanism there, and they are having lots of the China's debt strategy is working there, as it has happened with Bangladesh, it has happened with Sri Lanka. 76% of the GDP of Sri Lanka is due as loan installment to China. So this is the status. Pakistan has again moved that way. 40-50% of Pakistan's GDP is due to be paid as interest and as payment of loan in respect of CPEC and other Chinese huge investments in Pakistan. So scenario in South Asia is very, very complex. The emergence of this trio has isolated to some extent India in South Asia. We have lost one important neighbor which was never expected to behave, and the issue we all know that Lipulek and Kalapani, and that could have been settled diplomatically, that could have been discussed in a civilized way, but the way they have done on the instruction of China, that means that China has scored above India in Indian subcontinent. So this is a strange development, the development of this trio, and how this will behave in future, and how long the communist regime in Nepal carries there. This is something worth noting. Another important focus of India and China as part of string of pearl strategy of China is on Maldives. Maldives now President Soleh is pro-India. Before that, Qayyum was also for quite some time. He was quite cordial with India, but in between things take place, and China has taken more than 33 enclaves in Maldives on lease basis. So India is also retorting. India has also gone for 5-8 enclaves because Maldives constitutes an important part of this Indo-Pacific, and the future is going to be the part of the Indo-Pacific. I will come to this point later. Uh, in South Asia, so we are on the struggling front at the movement. They are fine with Bhutan and Bangladesh, but very recently Bangladesh also had some understanding with China for long. It's all part of China's forwarding of loans and debts and obliging the states and then trying to control the regimes. This is how they have done in Pakistan through CPEC, the $62 billion project, one of the biggest in I think it's the biggest in South Asia, and the reason for the development of this project are not far to be seen. China is feeling suffocated in South China. I will come to the South China episode and Indo-Pacific after South Asia. Since China is feeling suffocated by the literal states of South China Sea, they have to look for other alternatives. They had been looking for alternatives to Malacca Strait, and the major thing, the major breakthrough they found was this Pakistan's Gwadar airport and the CPEC project, 62 billion project they are going into. This relieves the pressure of the Malacca and the South China Sea, the confrontationist and conflicting situations they are having. But the problem is that it passes through Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which is a disputed territory, and India has full claims to it. And India, Pakistan, and China, all three are part of this disputed territory. China becomes part of it because Pakistan ceded about 3,500 kilometers of territory, square kilometers of territory to China in immediately after 1962 war in 1963. So there is trilateral engagement into Pak occupied Kashmir, and quite amazing that to pacify India and garner Indian support in 2018, China had proposed even China had proposed the change of the nomenclature of CPEC, and they could have changed this nomenclature as per Indian wishes, but India refused and India withdrew from the proposal, and India is not willing to join unless the issue of disputed territory exists. So the Chinese, after this COVID disaster, they found that the states are at the weaker point. They have been hit economically, and it is difficult to go for war. And they were free from it in March. In April, China declared that it is COVID free. So they found it appropriate to aggress on Indian border. So this is, if you take on the point of human values and ethics of war, this is unfair. But for China, if you have gone through their war strategicians and the god of war, Sun Yu, for him this is the best time to assault. When the enemy is weak on different fronts, economically, socially, or enemy is weak on the front of some calamity, natural calamity, that is the right time to inflict. And China is following the suit, and they have gone for this. And the results are different. They have seen the results, and At the same time, they have evoked the wrath of the littoral states of South China Sea. Now I will come to, after South Asia, I will come to South China Sea. We all know that South China Sea, it has 7, 8 littoral states who have claims over South China, and those claims are again overlapping. Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, and 3, 4 more states. Malaysia, these are having claims, and as per international law, we all know that all the states have territorial waters up to 12 nautical miles, and then we have up to 250 kilometers, the exclusive economic zones. So what happens that China has gone beyond those zones of international law. It has violated the rules and laws of international law, and that's why we say international law doesn't have spine. International Court of Justice and International Arbitral Court, Permanent Arbitral Court, I will come to it. It has passed a judgment regarding South China Sea in favor of Philippines in 2016. As per international law, our territories can extend up to certain limits. But what has happened here in South China Sea in 1948, China went unilaterally for the drawing of a line that is called 9-dash line. Erstwhile 11-dash line or 10-dash line something. Now it is called 9-dash line. It is far into high seas, and it infringes the exclusive rights of the sovereign rights of the littoral states of Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, all these states significantly. And this line covers almost 90% of the South China Sea. And the problem is that China has been claiming all these things on the basis of history, and they try to expand on the basis of history. Since China is a strong state and economically they have the strength to go for long wars, they like this kind of behavior with the neighboring states. As per international law in 2016, I think in 2013 or 14, Philippines government moved to arbitral court of Hague, and the judgment comes in 2016. This Philippines goes against China about the illegal occupation of certain islands like Spratly and Parasol Islands, and which don't have existence now as per the final judgment. And the judgment comes, but in advance China had moved to the court that China is not interested in following the developments regarding this case, and China abstained from the whole issue. The case was against China, but this is their strategy. This they did in 1914 at Shimla conference when McMahon line was withdrawn. China withdrew from it and said that we are not part of it. The same thing happened here at Hague. China withdrew from it, and the judgment comes in favor of Philippines. Philippines declares that International Court of this arbitration, permanent arbitral court declares that all the points of Philippines are worth considering, and it has rejected the 9-dash line that violates the laws of the sea, the UN Convention on Laws of Sea, and the international law. So 9-dash line stands rejected, but China says it is not party to the arbitral court's judgment. It has not participated there, so it will not oblige, it will not follow the things. So this is something that has led to a conflicting situation. China has violated even the economic exclusive zones of Philippines and Vietnam and Malaysia In Malaysia recently, they had stalled they had forced their ship for on account of some research exploration purpose. The same thing they did with Vietnam, and very recently, just a few weeks after the Galwan episode, when China was pushed back by India, Philippines has proposed India to join in South China Sea for its for the utilization and exploration of oil resources, as we had agreements with Vietnam in 2017. So something new is emerging out of this standoff. India has taken the lead. People thought that the things would happen as China had designed, but it has happened on the opposite. So uh, let us see what happens and what the final shape this border standoff between India and China takes place. Uh, but in South China Sea, China is in more troubles now. Out of this China's withdrawal, people have got the message that China is intruding between from 2014 to 2018. About 80 times China has intruded into Malaysian economic zone, exclusive economic zones. So this is not something new that China has been intruding into Indian borders. It is the Chinese strategy of pricking on the borders of neighbors and keep the issue alive, and use its strength and economy and debt policy accordingly to control the things in favor of China. So that policy, as a response to South China development, in 2007, four states, India, Japan, and Australia, and United States, went for the formation of Quad. So this this was the formation of four states and four democratic states. So the purpose was to develop a kind of cooperation and understanding in the zone, but it remained in a hibernated state for some time. It was after the Chinese assertions in South China Sea that it was felt by United States and Japan and Australia that it should be revived, and it was revived in 2017. On the line of this, since ASEAN states are also affected by the China's misadventures in South China Sea. So just a week back, I think, I'm not sure about the exact date, ASEAN states have impressed upon China to follow the judgment of Permanent Arbitral Court that came in favor of Philippines, and Philippines has been consistently asking China to follow the things. But the story of Philippines is different. I won't go into it. The previous leadership was different. The current leadership, the Roderick Duterte, who is he has behaved in mischievous way. Initially, he was too much into the Chinese psychophancy, but later on, after the developments and the Chinese intrusions, he has changed his stand. Now he has joined the anti-China club there. So this is the whole scenario in South Asia and South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific that has emerged as a new tool, new methodology. I think it was first this idea was floated by John Kerry in 2013-14. He was on a visit to Delhi where he discussed about that Quad had become dormant and it was in hibernation. So he tried to include India. It was the outcome of also Indo-US joint collaborations and strategic understandings that he found that India has to be roped into the new strategic managements of the area. So he wanted to somehow again, I would say, revive Quad and give it a broader base. And the idea of Indo-Pacific was floated by him. And two years back, in 2019, Indo-Pacific has been officially approved by U.S. Congress, and this has in its broader, if we take the maritime territory of this Indo-Pacific, it expands from the states of Gulf, the Africa, to the South China Sea and Australia. So this is and the Pacific also. So this is a huge area, and 85% of the trade supply of oil from Gulf areas and the supply of goods and uh, so many the huge bulk of trade takes place from this area. Why China is interested in CPEC? Because Malacca is being throttled. In recent developments, since Australia and China are also having differences over certain things, over the immigration issue and policy of China. So Australia has offered a military base for India in its Coros Island that is quite close to Malacca. And if this understanding materialize in near future, then Malacca Point could be choked. And since in case of direct conflicting situation, as India and China are, this point becomes very strategic for India. The whole Chinese movement could be checked and disturbed there. So that's why this CPEC becomes more important for China. That's why they are asserting on the Ladakhi and the Tibetan borders here. So these are the interrelated things. So in the end, I would say that the Indo-China standoff on the border, it continues. It has not ended. The official parleys are on, and the process of thawing of the hot waters are on. The ice is breaking, but this is not the end. China has proved this in past also, so we have to be quite alert here. But at the same time, the decision of the government of India to hit China economically, since we are having about $100 billion trade. India's second largest trade partner China is, and but the trade deficit is in favor of, hugely in favor of China. So India has tried to retaliate economically also. The idea of economic reliance is also part of it. So let us think in that way, from that perspective, and in these decisions of the ending of applications and the checking of Chinese investment and the filtering of the Chinese companies, their investments, and the newly crafted economic policy of India, people are learning from it. The American foreign minister, I'm not recalling his name, Pompeo something, he said that India has done the right thing by turning down, rejecting all its, banning all its apps, and we are also thinking about it. So they are in the process of thinking. We have already done that, and we believe that current government will take further and stern actions, and it will. This is for the first time that government has shown solidarity with Indian soldiers. Today, Indian Defense Minister was Rajnath Singh was there. Before that, Prime Minister Modi was there. This has happened for the first time. This has sent a strong message to the world also, that politics and the territorial determinations and the territorial settlements are not two different things. Governments and militaries, they have to work in a coordinate and in a mutually reciprocal and understanding way. Sometimes this is not seen, and where this kind of coordination fails, we have seen that states fail, as it has happened with Pakistan. So the India-China border standoff has huge repercussions for the regions. India has to re-strategize its policy in South Asia. The small neighbors who are on one plea or the other, they are trying to escape from the friendliness of their larger neighbor. That has to be reviewed, and we have to come out with certain solutions to that. At least we have to keep at the national interest at the forefront, and these things have to be followed accordingly. And Indian interest in, as Modi government had followed this Act East policy, and this was something new that was followed by government of India. Although it was preceded by Manmohan Singh's Look East policy, but Act East had something more in it. It was showing the extra interest of the Indian state in the Southeast Asian affairs. We entered into so many agreements with Vietnam and Philippines and the littoral states of South China Sea. That has to be increased. Since China is expanding territorially, it is not keeping the Wuhan and Chennai spirit. So India has given a befitting reply at Ladakh. We have to give a befitting reply strategically also in these zones, and we have to work for the increase of Indian engagements in the Southeast Asian states and Indo-Pacific, the periphery of Indo-Pacific, and the activism that has to be further strengthened. This is all. Hope I will get more opportunity if this platform offers me some other topic also. It was so nice to have a dialogue here. I thank you all. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.